Hey everybody, we are in Jimmy's mint MX-5 track day car in the simulator, and I figured it will be a good video to have a reasonable overview of what happens when you change the tires. Kinda important things on any car. The only thing that gives you grip on the road actually. Well, sometimes you can also get high G-forces from trees and guardrails, but that's not really the intent of racing, I don't think. So, what's the importance of tires? Well, we are now driving with semi-slicks, 205, fairly narrow tires, 50% sidewall height, semi-slicks, which is quite grippy. We're doing over a G, 1.1, 1.2 G on a flat skid pad, so it's more with banking. So it's really quite a bit of grip. So let's see what we can do here and how it feels, and then we can change the car to imaginary for now. Fat slicks, 275, 35, 15. We saw a MX-5 in America use these tires. It looked very hooked up. So we can look at the differences in handling and grip. Remember, Jimmy and me did the BMW 130i around here. I think Jimmy did a 202, I did a 205 almost. And that was a semi-slick car as well. BMW 270 horsepower, 1300 kilos. Here, because it's a sim, we have been optimistic given the current state of the car, so we've given it about 360 wheel horsepower and around 300 kilos of downforce at 200 kilometers an hour. These things are, we think, probably maybe possible, but a lot easier to apply in a sim. You just enter the numbers. Bravery turn. We missed that completely already. That's first lap success. So that's the thing with the sim, you can be over optimistic, we don't really want that, but you can also have an idea of the performance. So we are all fairly optimistic with power and downforce. But then again, what do the tires do? So, as you may know, of course, I've done a lot of cars and tires and physics models for Riser Studios with AMS1 and some racing drivers, and made some videos about tires. That doesn't make me an absolute expert, but we could use a bit more grip. So how do you know what the grip level of a semi-slick is compared to that of a full slick? Oh, locked up. You don't really know, but you can make sort of an educated guess. So what I'm doing is looking at the tire contact patch size, and that gives us a certain contact patch pressure on the track, and that sort of goes into a fairly complicated bit of code with load sensitivity. I am saying this purely to confuse you, but actually there is logic involved in coming up with the different grips. So I only enter the numbers, like 205 semi-slick, so the thread pattern isn't fully rubber, there's some air in there, so the percentage of the contact patch isn't as greatly occupied as with a full slick. Some of those parameters, and that means I just enter those parameters and it will create tire grip levels and load sensitivity and other things like the slip angles, how much the car wants to sort of rotate and how much you have to make the whole car turn to get the optimum grip levels. Everything is derived from fairly logical parameters. That doesn't make them true, very important, but at least it makes the difference between these tires logical and maybe true. Couple that to the experience I have with Riser and with some drivers, we might be ballpark-ish for the semi-slick and the slicks, but it's not manually entered. It's all derived from the, I guess everything is AI. It's not AI, it's an algorithm code that comes up with the grip. So what did it spit out for the semi-slick? Let's do a couple of laps. Remember that 2:02 is a good time in the BMW. So let's see what we can do. One immediate difference will be the gearing, because this tire we have on currently, 205/50 I think, has a larger diameter. I hate that eternal and understeer, excellent. Larger diameter than the 275 slick we will be installing later. So the speeds will be a bit different, and that's actually very useful in the sim, because we can also... Oh, locked up again, I'm not doing well. Apply the gear ratios in a future gearbox that is very likely to be on the real car. It has some gear ratio sets available. And of course, it's all over the place. It's not just the car, it's mostly my driving. With the sim, you have the correct tire size and you know the final drive ratios you can install, and you know the available gear ratios. And you have an engine torque curve, so you know the response of the engine on the dyno and some idea of the lag and in the turbo. You can actually use the sim after one track day, so you have a reasonable idea of the drag of the car, for example, to find out what sort of the optimal gear ratios are that you can choose for the car that will be reasonably good on all the tracks you're running. So what sort of 6th gear for your top speed. A lot of the time gear ratios are quite short, so you end up not using second. So what's the tallest second gear you have available? Feels quite floaty, slowish, like sluggish in its rotation, and fairly floaty on these high profile tires. This patience corner. So the sim is definitely useful even when the real car isn't fully made yet and you don't know everything yet. If you do know the gearbox you're getting and sort of the power you're gonna get, you have a reasonable idea of the drag, you can find out what your ratios will be and you can try them out. And I'm looking up again. And also for the suspension geometry, for example, oops, a daisy. I did my best to look at the geometry on an actual MX-5. You see, it's quite hairy with these tires. 360 odd horsepower and a lot of torque from the turbo. With that wide tire is asking quite a lot of semi-slicks. So with the suspension geometry and the pickup points for the spring and damper unit, you know kinda reasonably well what sort of spring rate, how that will translate to the car as well. So we have an option to try out different springs that we will know-ish. You know, it's all not exact. We're not a GP2 and it's been Formula 2 for a while now. We're not a professional Formula or LMP team, of course, but it can give you an indication. Already doing 155 there. So we, despite this car being all over the place, it being fairly light and more powerful than the BMW, we're already 8-9 seconds quicker without even trying. It's insane, even though it feels quite floaty. There is quite a bit of grip, it's just not very direct. But anyway, we can try springs and damper curves and damper rates and stuff from the manufacturer. We can actually see, well, we get a bit too much suspension movement with these springs. What if we go stiffer? And the numbers we will use in the sim will actually be reasonably comparable to the suspension movement we will see on the real car at the same G-forces. So it's extremely useful, even with limited data and not being super professional. It's still very useful to have a sim model. And then of course you can fine-tune with some subjective, how understeery or oversteery was it with these settings. There's always some subjective information, but some of those objective numbers, like knowing that with 600 pounds per inch springs, for example, you get way too much movement in suspension, and your aero is going to be not working great. So how stiff do you want to go? Also the front to rear ratio. At some point, if the rear is too stiff, you might get more oversteer. You might get a reasonable approximation in the sim. So I'm not driving properly, I'm talking. Let's do a lap now at some speed. It's sort of very floaty at the back. See what we can do here. The distinct feeling that the power is just too much for the tires that I've made. Again, these are not exactly the same tires. No apex at all there. It's just what the algorithm thinks the tire grip might be. Let's not lock up now. It's floaty all the way. Oh, too early on the throttle, understeering. I'm making a fool of myself with the driving, but I hope some of the things I've just said are interesting to hear about. Making a sim model of a car like this. We'll just have to do another lap. That's actually fast-ish. Still negative. And that floatiness is partly because of a lack of grip compared to wider slick tires, but also the higher sidewall of this tire, 50%, with the same sort of tire construction, could mean, doesn't have to mean, but could mean that the slip angles are slightly larger, so the car has to rotate a bit more before it has its optimum grip. And it can give you a bit of a floaty feeling, especially with the rear tires having to do cornering and coping with like 360 horsepower, which are just a lot of horsepower for per millimeter of tire there. Patience. Bad line. Banking is missing sadly in this version. So the high sidewalls could mean we just need a bit more steering angle, and the whole car has to yaw a bit more in the turns, giving us a little bit more floaty feel, especially with the power overcoming the grip, and then the rear starts to be sort of a... It feels a bit like what you look at historic touring cars, that sort of constantly moving around. Again, you know, the power levels are attainable, but perhaps a little optimistic. As are the downforce figures, 300 kilos at 200 kilometers an hour. But it's interesting to see with a reasonably optimal car with power and downforce, How much are you limited by the tire? And currently it feels like we are extremely limited by that tire and by the driver. So we did do a 153.8 there, but all over the place. Can go into the 52s easily, I think. Easily-ish, like not on this session, but... And let's try to drive it a bit more respectfully, he says. That corner has so much banking in real life. Not flat out. Just wants to get away from you a little bit. Even here it feels a little easily off the ease of the brakes, gently, gently. Ease on the power. Definitely cannot be too binary with those inputs, have to be a bit smooth. I wish there was banking. It's not easily flat out here. It was with the BMW, we could just do it. Power to weight of this car is just better. Oh, too late, too late. Aero makes it very stable, if a bit understeery at high speed. Braking into those turns. Patience corner. And this is actually the tallest second gear available for this gearbox. And it's already short, so I don't think there's any need to use a shorter second gear unless you plan to drive on Buckmore Park. Hey, there's an idea. ABS, so I have to be below the limit really. Okay, so there we have it. It's a 152. You could easily see the driver was the weak link, which it never is when Jimmy is in the car. Never. But 10 seconds quicker than the BMW 130i, which also had semi-slicks. Quite hard semi-slicks. 270 horsepower, 1300 kilos. So even with these completely under-dimensioned tires on minty MX-5, whatever, does it have a name? It's very mint. We are 10 seconds quicker than a pretty quick pronounced track-prepared BMW 130i. So this thing is amazingly quick, 10 seconds quicker with these tires. So now let's do another little bit of a run with theoretical, but they do exist, 275 35 15 slick tires, which are softer in compound plus slick and chunky boys. So coming out of the pits with this much extra tire width and this much less sidewall height, slicks and softer compound. So you'd say that's a big difference. So 154, 52, right? I think 152. With the other tires, what do we do here? Well, the gearing, steering is heavier, logically. And the gearing is a little different because the tire is a little smaller, so we're doing a bit more revs at the same. It feels so different. The grip is insane. Oh, give me more of that. So it is a lot more direct because we have more grip and a much narrower sidewall, so it responds quicker because we don't need as much slip angle in the sim. I mean, you can have a tire constructed in a million ways, so it's not absolute truth, but sort of believable relative truth compared to the previous tire. It accepts the power instantly, despite us being effectively shorter geared with a smaller radius. Oh, the grip and mid-corner grip is just insane. So we go from about 1.1, 1.2 to 1.4-ish G. Same downforce, 300 kilos at 200 kilometers an hour. Same power, 360 horsepower-ish. It's just a world of difference. The front is so direct and pointy. The tire is now also easily matching the power of the car. And when you turn, it just is there, you know. The rear is stable. The rear follows the front better, you know. The front is more direct because the slip angles went from 8 degrees-ish to about 6 degrees-ish. So you think that's just 2 degrees, but there's more grip and it builds up quicker, and that just transforms the handling off center. It's so more go-kart-like now. Suspension is the same, it's weird. It would, if you didn't know better, you would think the springs are twice the stiffness. Are running out of revs a little. Of course, more grip in the corners, but also more grip equally out of corners and braking. I might have to take a higher gear because we are shorter geared with the tire size, but also just going so much faster and driving so terribly too. Still gonna short shift. I think we might kinda do that flat out now. There was no chance earlier. Do a bit of a, I don't know my lines, you know, but the driving is not if you take away anything from this video, don't take the driving lines and stuff away. They're a bit rusty, but 1:47.8 random lap. And there's so much more in it. Well, if you find the gears. It feels like a completely transformed car. Like the little moment there was short and snappy, and with the other tires it was sort of never enough grip and always floating. This feels like a racing car. This is amazing. Here as well, the back is just stable-ish. Let's try this in 4th gear. Yeah, boost picks up nicely already. Oh, yeah, that's terrible. My driving really is bad today. And that stability with the big rear wing. Yeah, it is a bit understeery maybe, but that's the thing in the sim. Oh, it's so nice. It just hops over the curb and says, yeah, that's right. Stability is a lot more important in real life for your confidence. In a sim you might, I wasted time there. You might want to oversteer everywhere in your sim because you think you can handle it, but stability in high-speed turns is important. And I think a lot of the time in the sims, and I've talked about this with other people who I sort of trust for physics and car setup advice and stuff like that. He also reckons that perhaps in the sim we go towards more oversteer, especially in perhaps in AC and in AMS2 or RF. No, there's a corner here somewhere. Okay, we're good. These sims that are fairly easy to drive over the limit can also encourage you to sort of be too comfortable at the limit, where in real life you might not have that same level of comfort being a real car that costs real money to repair if you crash it. So it's stability. I think in the sim you say it understeers in the high-speed stuff, but in real life you would say, okay, I'm just going to enter the turns a little bit slower in, faster out, and then enjoy the stability. Anyway, let's see if we can do a couple of laps that are a bit more fitting to these tires. Off throttle it turns a little bit. It feels like it's on rails and a little hop, but the rear stays completely stable. Yeah, I'm just leaving like 8 kilometers an hour on the table there. And I'm leaving the apex. Who needs good gear shifts? Wait, and then add the throttle. I'm not used to the Right-hand drive as well. Oh, can it drift? Oh, you don't really wanna. Let's go even quicker, because this is all a bit comical, really. So yeah, huge stability. You could call it on the steer, but let's just call it confidence inspiring. Missing the apex, had to come off the throttle, sucks. I suppose it's not that fair to do a lot more laps in this than I did with the old tires, but it is a lot more fun to drive. Pushing it on the brakes quite hard. That stability also makes it possible to trail brake so nicely, and the rear is just completely accepting of the power there, or of the brakes. It doesn't unload too much. It's very stable. That's fuck. It could be a sequential shifter in real life, and then I wouldn't lose all my time gained in the first two corners. And it does turn around if you want to. Okay, well, basically 153.0 and 146.0. That is 7, 8, 9, 0. 7 seconds? 7 seconds quicker with just a tire change. It's insane. And not just it's the weird thing is it hasn't just changed the tires or the grip. You can see the handling is so different. It is so much more direct. It accepts the power, so it's not wallowy. The backhand is completely stable. High-speed stability is everywhere. Answer the question nobody asked. Do tires matter? Yes, they do. 7 seconds here at Assen. Plus, you know, 153 at Assen is a quick lap time, but 146 is getting like, I have to look up sometimes, but that's getting on, like that's proper quick. So with these tires, you go faster than with these tires. I'll just do another lap. I just want to get into the 45s because I'm not happy with my driving. A bit too sim racery, like too violent with the inputs. It's so nice that braking into this turn that you can just lean on the nose ever so slightly and then it turns in. There's also an area, I think, but I'm not sure, but the brake bias is relatively forward. Of course, you have to keep in mind this car has 53%-ish of the weight on the nose, and when you brake with these fat tires, you brake at 1.5 G, there's a lot of weight load transfer going on, so your optimal brake bias is like 70%, 72, 73. And in the sim you often run more rearward bias maybe. But you can really feel how that braking into those turns, how it takes stability away. And it might be a technique to drive, but this stability is so confidence inspiring, and these big tires give you a lot of grip. So I think this is a quick way, if it's not overdone with ultra understeer, but this could be a quick way to drive the car. Well, done better than I'm doing. You feel the cornering grip increase very nicely if you get off the brakes, because the fronts are dominating with the brakes and the rear isn't being upset by the brake bias. So it gives you a very planted feel. Slightly on the brakes into these turns. Very, very nice. I'm still, though, looking at the time, I was negative there for a little bit, but didn't plan on this lap to be quick. And with these tires and these grip levels and lack of boost in first gear to turn it around, you have to be careful. There's a stupid amount of grip, but the driver is also stupid, never forget that. We can always overcome whatever grip we have. So here I did a bit too much sim racer and not enough composed real racing there. But the thing is, compared to the BMW, we are going like 17 seconds quicker. 17 seconds, I mean, this is properly fast, and you just know that you feel there is not as much time in between turns to think about your line and to be smooth. It's like fast forward BMW here. Let's see if we can do a 45. Probably not. That's such a technical corner, hence messing it up every time. Yeah, the biggest difference is just, well, everywhere, but here you want to go on the throttle because it's exciting. And with the narrow semi-slicks, you were afraid of going on the throttle with this setup. You probably want to run a stiffer front anti-roll bar, dial some of it out, just to make it less scary. Understeer, no! Oh, pushing it through there. Don't think you would continue that. After messing up the line, you would just brute force your way through it. I don't think I'd do that. But there were some moments of calming down a little. You can see the car responds better if you're calm. And I think we are too wild in some of the sims anyway, in sim racing, because we get away with it. I'm not getting the hang of this. In this video. But the thing, this car is now properly quick. Enough of a handful to, even for an experienced driver, I think, to learn from. Going to be another 45. And weirdly, and somewhat confusingly, this actually feels a little bit more in the eternal right-hander there. A bit more like the BMW did with the understeer. Just had higher grip levels than the BMW had. A lot higher. But that's kinda, I'm doing this on purpose now, kind of another one of those sim things, right? You're not there. You don't feel the G and you're not sort of intimidated by the speed. So it is very normal for people to interpret like 1.5 G in the sim to 1 G in real life. And we know the sim is pretty good with its grip levels and telemetry overlays with real data. I mean, AMS1 with the good physics model has proven itself to be pretty good, like usable for driver training and everything, so it's definitely quite good. Yet still, with the numbers that you can kind of trust, even though we don't know everything about this car, we've done so many other cars that we can kind of give this as sort of a very optimistic view of what might be achievable with downforce and grip and power. It's all like up there, and achieving it in real life is going to be a lot of work and quite hard, so it's not like that and you have it in real life. But it might be representative of what could be achieved in real life. Yet still, in some corners, this to me feels closer to the BMW, which had a lot less grip and was heavier. You see, it's even, yeah, how do you explain it? It's just that the lack of being there, lack of sense of speed, just makes people think there isn't enough grip in the sim, even though factually, with all the telemetry, all the data, there is plenty of grip, and the slip angles are plenty tight, yet it feels wallowy sometimes, or understeer, or lack of grip, even though obviously, look at the lap times, look at their overlays, it's fine. So that's quite a big layer of real versus sim. And yeah, I wanted to mention a few of these things in this video, just a general tendency, I think, of some people with some sims to have it more oversteery than you would in real life, and having more inputs than you would have in real life, where it's more about patience perhaps than it has to be in a sim. So I hope you found that somewhat interesting. Do bigger tires matter? Yes, but what else do you get other than grip? It was fun to do anyway, and let's just see if we can also drift with these tires. A little tricky, perhaps in third gear. Of course, we have a pretty big turbo, so my instructor, our instructor at the BMW days, who once drove a champ car, managed to do it here, so oh. I can't, no. Charles, we're not as good as you. That was terrible. That was horrible. Guaranteed to be non-authentic champ car driver. So much grip. Laggy turbos. Not easy to drift. But you see how snappy it is, right? So different to the other tires. Anyway, I could go on forever. A reverse 360 entry. There we have it. The difference between 205 50 section 15-inch semi-slicks and 275 millimeters fat slicks. It is huge, and it's more than just a grip. I hope you found that an interesting video. I'm sweaty now, so I did something good. Alright guys, thanks for watching. See you later. Again, this is not what the car is like currently, it's what it might be like eventually, and developments for the sim. We can have 700 horsepower rotary tomorrow, 1000 horsepower V10 in 10 minutes all these grip levels, you know, suspension has to cope, everything. It's a lot harder to do this in real life, but theoretically, the sim, I mentioned a lot of advantages that it gives us even as a not super professional team of guys, enthusiasts. We can check the gear ratios, we can put in the torque curve, we get a reasonable idea of spring rates, suspension movement, aero balance, and even these tires. Even though there is not a lot of real data, we still have some idea that we can expect to be a lot more grip limited, traction limited with those semi-slicks at these power levels than with actual fat slicks if they are available. Will the difference be exactly the same? Probably not, but relatively it might be a pretty good indication. So I am repeating myself. Bye bye guys.